Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope and at times humour. Michelle Cullen lost her husband John in 2015 when he was just 52, following a very short battle with pancreatic cancer. He left behind 2 young daughters, and as a result, Michelle then went on to overhaul her life and change her career and her career path. And she joins me on this week's podcast. Michelle, you're very welcome for coming in. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to also talk about your brother, David, who you lost when you were just 9, from cystic fibrosis. But first, let's talk about John. He was just 52.
He just turned 52 in February and he died in May.
And he'd just been diagnosed 5 months before.
He was diagnosed about 5 months before that with pancreatic cancer, yeah.
What sort of a person was he?
Well, he's kind of the person, he was Scottish, so he was the type of person that when he comes into a room, like everyone kind of gravitates towards him. He was such good fun, and he was the life and
energy.
Soul. Oh my God, huge energy, and he was the life and soul of every party, and he was always the last to leave.
Yeah. So he sounds like somebody that was full of life, full of like vibrant, and just really loved living.
Yeah, and he was really good crack. He played a lot of golf, so he had a lot of golf friends, and they used to go away playing golf and weekends on golf. And he worked in Intel as well, where I worked. So he was a manager in there, and he would have had a lot of people there that would have, he's just friends with everybody. He'd never have a bad word to say about anybody, and everyone gravitated towards him, and they would go to him for advice, and he was just larger than life guy.
Yeah. Tell me about his diagnosis and how that came about, because oftentimes these cancer diagnoses can come completely out of the blue.
Yeah, so this one did. We were on holidays in Portugal, and when we came back, we were going to the Cliff House. It was a birthday present from my parents for 2 nights to go in Waterford. So we went there, and he was saying he wasn't feeling great, but he was fine. And, the usual man flu, you don't really think of much of it.
Yeah.
So when we got home then, he was working night shift in Intel. So I think he was working the Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night and Tuesday night. That was his shift. Yeah. So I was getting up in the morning with Faye for school. But each time he came home in the morning, I'd be up and he'd say, "Do you think I'm very brown?" And I said, "Well, I did notice when we were in Waterford that you had still got your tan, and usually it's me that keeps the tan longer than you. So, yeah, it looks strange." And then he pulled up his jumper and he said, "But can you see?" He said, "I've actually got it at the side." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you're not a professional sunbather. So
you didn't get it even.
He doesn't have an even tan, yeah. And anyway, John didn't tan. He used to love getting a tan, and he would suffer to get one. Yeah. But he didn't really tan. So I was like, "Yeah, that is strange that you're brown." So then he said he wasn't feeling great, and I was like, "John, you need to just go to the doctor. I don't want to hear, don't start now. Don't start this where you're just going to moan and moan and moan. Go to the doctor if you're not feeling well." So that was fine. And then the next morning he came home. Each morning he came in from shift, he would say something else was wrong with him. I was like, "Oh my God, he's driving me mad." So the last morning he came in and he said, "Do you think the white of my eyes are yellow?" And I was like, "Oh, come here, let me have a look." So I looked into them. I was like, "Oh my God, they are so yellow." So I said, "You really need to go to the doctor." So he said he'd go to work that night and then he would organise a doctor on his day off. That was grand. Didn't really think much of it, just that that's strange. And then he said to me, I made his breakfast and he said he didn't eat it. And I was like, "Are you gone off your food?" And he said everything tastes metal in his mouth. So anyway, I went about my business. He went to bed, and I met my neighbour across the road, and he was saying, how are things? And I said, yeah, all good. How's John? He said, and his name is John too. And I said, yeah, he's good. And then I thought, no, he's not actually. So it just made me stop, and I said, no, well, actually, John's not that good. And he said, why, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know. His skin looks very yellow, and the white of his eyes are very yellow. And he said, oh, Michelle, he needs to go to the doctor. And I said, yeah, he's going to go now tomorrow. When he's off shift. And he said, no, you need to get an appointment for him today. And I was like, oh, okay. So I rang the doctor when I was walking the dog and made an appointment for him. Thought nothing of it because I went off and got my nails done, as you do. And I rang Faye, my daughter, and I said to her, will you wake your dad up and tell him he's an appointment for the doctor at 5 o'clock? So he did that, and he went, and the doctor saw him, did loads of blood tests and everything. And he said, because we were in Portugal, he could have one of the hepatitis, is it C or something? Because
from the mosquito or the...
do you know what? He said it was actually from fish. He thought it might be from fish. So he said, because myself and Faye were with him, we would be contagious as well. So we have to get a vaccine because we wouldn't be able to go outside the house. He told him not to go to work and to stay in. And about 3 weeks later then, so that went on, maybe 2-3 weeks later, the doctor rang. John was asleep. And I said, do you want me to take a message because he's asleep? And he said, no, I need to speak to him. So woke John up, and he said, can you come in to me? He said, you don't have hepatitis A, B, C or D. He said, everything is normal, but I need you to go and see this consultant in the Hermitage Clinic. So we went there the next day, and then she said, and of course she said to John, well, I'm sure you've been Googling on Mr. Google. So he had, yeah. And she said, well, you've either got a tumour in your pancreas or your bile duct. And he said, what's happening is the reason you've gone jaundice is because your bile duct is blocked. So the tumour is blocking your bile duct. So the toxins in your body can't flush out. So all they do is they swim out to your skin. And that's what turns you yellow.
Okay.
Yeah. So
as quick as that.
As quick as that, yeah. So she said, go to Blanchardstown Hospital. You need to get a CT scan and an ultrasound. And so he went there and he stayed the night. And the nurse the next morning came in and said, do you want the good news or the bad news? And we're like, still kind of oblivious to everything, thinking it was okay.
Yeah, because it's so quick as well.
And she said, he said, oh, just tell me whatever it is. And she said, well, the bad news is you do have a tumour on your pancreas, but the good news is it's not in your bloodstream, so it's operable and you're very, very lucky. She said, there's a lot of people that come and they're not as lucky as you, so you'll be fine. So then we went to Vincent's Private to see Justin Gagan, and we to bring the CT scans with us, and he looked at them on the Friday, and he said, I'll be back to you on Wednesday and I'll let you know what the course of action is, because I need to see my team. We need to look at the scans and decide what course of treatment we're going to do. So we were like, oh my God, we have to wait. We expected
it's the longest
answer.
ever. Yeah.
It's terrible, isn't it? So that's the whole weekend. And then he said, I will call you on the Wednesday. It might be late. So he actually rang at 8:10 on the Wednesday night, as promised. And he said, we've spotted a little red herring. We don't know what it is. It's on your liver. So we need to come in and do an MRI, I think it was, on the liver, just to see. And he said, he just told him straight out. He said, if it's spread into your liver, he said, then we won't be able to do anything. You'll just get chemo for quality of life. But he said, we have to do that first.
Yeah.
So we went in, did the MRI, hadn't mentioned this to anybody at all now. None of the family knew any of this because we wanted to find out what it was before we were worrying anybody. But did the MRI, and he came back and he said, yeah, it's in your liver, so it's not operable.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And that's what you hear.
And that's it.
Yeah.
It's not operable. And then the oncologist came in and he said he was going to do the chemo, this, that and the other. Absolutely amazing guy. And John said to him, so have you cured? He said, all I need to know is, have you cured what I have? And he said, yes, I have. And he said, you're young, you're fit, and I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at you. You'll be fine. And that's what you cling on to.
Absolutely.
So that was it. We're like, okay, this is fine then.
Yeah. So you have that false hope in one way.
In one way, yeah.
But really, sometimes the people don't respond to the chemo or to any sort of... The quality of life isn't often there.
No. Once the chemo started, it was just went downhill from there.
And then, so for you and your daughters, one daughter was in New York.
One was in New York. Megan was in New York, yeah.
So you're just clinging on to some sort of normality.
Yeah, so we said that if once we found out if it was secondary, then we would tell her. But there was no point in telling her and getting her to come home when he could go and do his chemo. I mean, he didn't even want to tell his own family in Scotland. Yeah. He just wanted to do the chemo and come out the other side. And he said, what's the point in telling them and upsetting them? They don't need to know. I'll get over this and it'll be fine. But anyway, that never happened because he didn't become fine.
Yeah.
And so we rang Megan and told her, and she came home. And he just started his chemo then. But John was an engineer in Intel, so he had... he was gassed because he'd have his Excel spreadsheets and he'd put his pain management into the Excel spreadsheet of when to take his tablets. Because he said, like, can you remind me? I was like, don't ask me to remind you to do anything. I don't want anything to do with this. You're in control. Yeah. But I think he did this Excel spreadsheet so that he felt in control of what was happening to his body.
Which he'd no control over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 5 months...
So he was in and out of hospital the whole time, yeah. And, as I said, John, everyone gravitated to him. The nurses absolutely loved him in Vincent's. So much so that they said, don't put him into a hospice. Leave him here. We'll look after him. And I think because it was in November when he started his chemo. And then at Christmas time, he told me bring in chocolates and a couple of bottles of champagne for the nurses. It's because they were having their Christmas party. And they were all cheersing to him, and they couldn't do enough for him. Absolutely couldn't do enough for him.
But it's so like when you get the 5 months, and your life turns like that, like suddenly from the minute you're told to obviously when the end comes, whether it's slow or whether it's sudden.
I know.
And it just becomes hospitals, appointments.
Well, and that's what it was. It was, and then you see that he did the first round of chemo, and then we went in to get the results of that. And the oncologist said, "It's not working. Do you want to do it again?" And John said, "Yeah, of course I do. I don't want to die." So he said, "Right, we'll start again." But I think by about the middle of January, they still hadn't called him back for chemo. And I remember John saying, "Oh my God, Michelle, they're just leaving me to die." He says they think I'm a hopeless case and they're not bringing me back in for chemo. Why are they taking so long to get me back? So I rang the nurses in oncology and they were like, "Oh, Michelle," and I told them what he said. And she rang me back later on that evening. She said, "I've got a cancellation. Bring him in tomorrow morning." So we went back in and he did the first one. And I mean, the nurses I remember one nurse seeing him. She was like, "Oh my God, John, you look like Casper the Ghost. Here, sit down." And she'd get a wheelchair for him. But then he started the second round of chemo and completely floored him. Completely. Like he ended up getting blood clots.
Yeah. And that's the hard bit, like the blood clots, the pneumonia, the double pneumonia.
We didn't get any of that now, but they put a stent in his neck to stop the blood clots going into his brain. And like one day I was in with them and I left and I was only like halfway home and I got a phone call from the hospital to say, "Come back. He's just had a stroke." So went back in. And he was actually fine, like he completely recovered. But because, this is John, he said, "Oh my God, Michelle," he said, "you want to see the response of the nurses in here." He said, "If we had that in Intel, it would be fantastic." He's like, "I had about 15 nurses around my bed in the space of a second."
Yeah.
And he said them doing everything with me.
Yeah.
He said it was amazing.
Well, the nurses are amazing. They're just
unbelievable.
Incredible.
Yeah.
John then passed away.
So the ending was, as you say, it was kind of quick. So he wanted to, like, in all fairness, we were still, when I look back on it now, we were so naive. Like we still didn't think he was going to die, and we never spoke about death. We never spoke about him leaving me or dying or anything like that. About what I would do. Never spoke. But
you
about
don't
that.
At the time.
No, but we
and
did,
it's not
because you don't think
in the picture. Yeah.
Because we didn't speak about it, and then he wanted to go to Portugal, and he said, "Will we bring the girls to Portugal?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be lovely. Why don't we do that?" And so I said it to one of the nurses, and she said, "Michelle, do you realise John is really sick? And I said, yeah, I know, he's got pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
But he wants to go to Portugal, so can we go? And I said, look, he can take all his drugs over there the same as he's taken here. And she said, have you spoken to, I think it was Dr. Fleming was his name, the oncologist. And he said, have you spoken to him? And I said, no, not lately. Why? And she said, okay, I need to set up a meeting and you can talk to him. So the next day then, John was wanting to come home. And the next day the nurse came in and she said, will you come with us? And he said, where are you going? And I said, I couldn't tell him I was going to see his oncologist. So I said, oh, I'm just going to talk to the social worker about how to get you home. So she said, so I was sitting, it's like I remember it so vividly. I was sitting outside his office and one of the nurses came with me and I was like, okay, that's not a good sign. And then I was kind of nervous, but I said to her, geez, I feel like I'm standing outside the principal's office waiting to get detention or something, as usual. But anyway, went into him and he said to me, John wasn't doing well straight away. And he said, just to let you know, he said the scans from the first round of chemo, the chemo didn't do anything to his tumours. He said, in fact, they multiplied. And he said, and he didn't tell us that now at the beginning, because what's the point, you know? And so he said, do you want to see them? I said, no, I don't want to see them. I get what you're saying and I trust you. And he said, and the chemo, Michelle, now is really not working with him. His body is not able for it. It's too strong. And so I said, so what's the next steps then? And he says, there are none. And I said, so are you telling me he's going to die? And he said, yeah, I'm really sorry, but he is. So I said, okay, so just tell me, because I kind of feel that when I know everything, I can handle it. But don't give me surprises.
Yeah.
So I said to him, tell me much time has he got left? And he said about 4 to 6 weeks. And I said, oh God. I said, so I suppose Portugal is out of the question, then we can't go there. He was like, no, you're not going to Portugal, Michelle. So he said, I'll tell John tomorrow. So when I went back to the room, John, he said, you know something, something's going on, you need to tell me. And I actually couldn't tell him. And I don't, he kept asking me, and I'd always tell him everything, but this one thing I just couldn't tell him. Your oncologist just told me you've got 4 to 6 weeks left to live, but I couldn't tell him. So anyway, the next day the oncologist came in and he said to John, I had to pretend I didn't know anything. And he said to him, you have a couple of months. And in my head, I'm like, okay, a couple of months, that's actually 8 weeks. So it's not 4 to 6, it's now 8 weeks that he has left. And he was in a coma within 5 days. He was actually dead within 5 days from that. Because he went into a coma then, and that was it. Wow.
And Faye was quite young.
So Faye was only 11, Megan was 25.
Had you had the chance, did you get the chance to have that conversation? Like, did Faye understand?
She knew, yeah. Both Megan and Faye knew that he had cancer and that he wasn't going to survive.
So they knew, Faye and Megan both knew.
But you know what? We're a very close family. The girls are great.
Yeah. And
they understood. And we were in the hospital the whole time. We practically lived there for the full week. And the nurses would they had lovely beds, not beds, like these massive big chairs that open out into a nice bed. So we slept there every night as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After losing John, you sort of looked at your life and your career path and... Well,
when I worked in Intel as well for about 17 years, and my last role in there was communications manager. And I always thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mum.
Yeah.
The Stepford wife and have the lovely clean house.
It looks
and the
very
lovely
glamorous.
It sounds
and
very
relaxing.
So I took the voluntary redundancy.
Yeah.
And I think after about 6 months of being at home, I was like, oh my God, get me out of here. Because I was ready to kill my whole family.
Yeah.
Ready to go to Mountjoy.
It's not all it's cracked up to be.
It's not cracked up to be. And I really take my hat off to the ladies who can stay at home and be a stay-at-home mum, because it's really hard. It's easier to get out of the house and go to work.
It is.
Yeah. So anyways, after about 6 months, 8 months, I decided I would go back to work. So I was working in town in IBAC College. I was doing their internal communications for about 4 years, and then I got a contract with Ulster Bank and I did their internal communications, and then that was finished and I went to Portugal, and that's when John got sick. But anyway, after John died, Faye had said to me, like Megan and Faye were like, are you going to go back to work? And I said, well, I can't stay at home, girls. My head is just too busy. I'm not able to stay at home. And
work is a distraction.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just something else.
Yeah. So Faye was still in school. She was just in 6th class. So she said, well, Mum, when you go back, can you find a job where you're there in the house when I get up for school, and you're there in the house when I come home from school? And I was like, yeah, great. Where am I going to find a job with school teacher hours? So while John was sick, very quickly, just to recap, when John was sick, there was a beauty show on in the RDS. And because we were in and out the whole time, I said to John, I'm going to bring the girls into the beauty show and we'll be in till later on that day. And when I went in, they were doing... And we were going around all the different stands, and they were doing microblading, semi-permanent brows. And I was chatting to one of the girls. I wanted to get it done. And Faye was like, Mum, please don't do that. Please don't do it. Don't do it. So I was like, oh my God, get her to school the next day and then I'll come back.
I'll go back.
And that's what I did. So then I met a lady there from Epibrow, and I got talking to her. She was Scottish, so I was telling her my husband was sick. When I think about it now, the poor woman, like I was saying, no, he'll be fine. He has pancreatic cancer, but he's going to live. But anyway, I happened to say to her, I'd love to do something like this. I'm fed up working for corporate companies. I'd love to do something for myself. And she said, why don't you do this? And I said, no, I can't do that. I'm not a beautician. And she said, no, you don't need to be. It's a technique. We teach you. So I left it at that. That was all. And then when Faye said that to me about the teacher hours, I thought, gosh, why don't I look into that microblading again? Yeah. So I had met a girl, that lady did my brows, and the girl that was there with her was Karen Burke. She has a Bano in Ballantyre. So we became like really, really good friends. And she was doing my top up of my brows. And I had said to her that I was thinking of getting into it. And she said, definitely do it. And she would help me and blah, blah, blah. So I rang Karen one day and I said, Karen, I'm looking at this guy doing microblading and it looks absolutely amazing. And she said, is his name Branko Babic? And we spelt his name out because we weren't sure we were pronouncing it right. And she said, oh my God, if you could train with him, he's amazing. She said, I've been stalking him for 3 years. So I did. So long story short, I went to Benidorm in October after John died in May and did my training there and got qualified. And 2 years after being qualified, I was promoted to a royal artist, which meant I could mentor students. And then a year after that, I got promoted to a master, which meant for the bold brow technique, which made me the first bold brow fee brow artist in Ireland, which was great.
So it was an achievement. You did something for yourself, and it was sort of because also you go from when not only have you lost your husband, you suddenly become a single mother. Yeah. So everything's on you.
And you're starting your own business.
Yeah.
And you don't realise that you're doing it.
Yeah.
You actually don't realise you're doing it.
It
and
just
do you know,
happens.
it was, when I look back on it now, it really is a blur. But when I look back on it now, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Because even the detail in the microblading is really hard to master. The pressure on the client's skin, everything is really hard to do. And I'm the type of person that if I find something too hard, I'd be like, oh, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to continue. I would drop everything rather than push myself. So I reckon John dragged me through this by the scruff of the neck.
And he was like, you are doing this.
100%. 100%. I definitely believe that because I know the way I'm built. I know the way my mind operates, that if I get fed up of something, I'll drop it. Yeah. Completely drop it.
Much earlier on in your life, John wasn't your first tragedy. Sadly, when you were almost 9, you lost your brother. Yeah, so it was actually 2 days before my 9th birthday. And my brother David, he was 10 and he had cystic fibrosis. So the two of us grew up together. As myself and David is the year between us. And then there's 6 years between myself and my next brother. And there's Malcolm and Darren, and there's a year between them two, so they kind of grew up together. Okay, so two almost sets of twins. Yeah. Wow. So myself and David would have been together all the time. Yeah. But all I remember from David, I mean, is like I was very young, is he was always sick, always sick, but he was always laughing, and he was always in and out of hospital. We were living in England at the time. My parents are both Irish, but they had moved over to London and we were living there. And they had all of us there and then we moved back to Ireland. But anyway, we were still living there. And I remember him in and out of Great Ormond Hospital, Ormond Street Hospital. And they used to have this
my mum would say, oh, we have to go to the hospital with David today. And I said, oh, are we going to the one with the big horse inside?
Yeah.
Because in the reception here, it's this massive big horse. And I was allowed to sit on it. And
yeah, it's funny the things
I know,
you remember.
Yeah.
So he was very sick.
He was always sick, yeah.
Hugely impactful on your childhood as well.
Yes, I always remember Mum and Dad like patting his back to get the phlegm up and him coughing and then he'd get it up and we'd go play. But I do remember one particular time he'd missed school quite a bit because he was sick, and we were going back to school and we ran across the playground together to go to our class. And the next thing he got a coughing fit again and he had to go home. So, like, it was really, really tough, yeah.
How then, I mean, you were saying to me before this, that's very sadly your dad, or David died in your dad's arms.
So we were on, and I didn't realise this until recently, we were on holidays in Ireland. So every summer my parents would come back to Ireland, and we stayed the 6 weeks. They'd literally pick us up from school, pick me up from school in my uniform, and I'd change in the car and we'd be going straight to the boat.
Yeah.
So we were on holidays, and we were staying in my auntie's house in Carrick-on-Shannon, and my dad was putting David to bed. It was about 9:30, I think he said, and he was putting David to bed, and David was sitting on his knees, and he said, David just turned to him and said, I'm sorry, Dad, and he died in his arms.
Just like that. And 2 days later, you were 9.
And well, the next morning, like I didn't know, but the next morning then I was going to Ballinamore to my other cousin, because there's myself, Louise and Trish, we're all same age group, and one was from Ballinrobe. Louise used to come over from Ballinrobe, and the three of us were like the three amigos, and we used to spend every summer together. And I was going over to them, and I was trying to sneak out of the house in Carrick-on-Shannon so my brother didn't hear me to come with me, because I didn't want him to come with me because I wanted time. Little did I know he was dead. But
wow. So anyway, when did that? How were you?
So what happened was my dad said we were going in the car, and Dad came with me, and I thought it a bit strange, but I thought it a bit strange that my dad was coming with me, that my aunt wasn't just dropping me off. So when we got there, then we sat with my aunt, and I thought it quite strange because he brought me up to the sitting room, and we normally stay in the kitchen, and he just said, I need to tell you that David died last night. And to be honest, I don't really remember anything after that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Because
yeah, it's because you're 9.
Yeah, you're 9. Yeah. So how do you? Well, you're 8. You're going to be 9 in 2 days. How do you internalize that? And I'm like, okay. And I probably cried. I can't remember. I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
But then he left, and I stayed in Ballinamore, and with my cousins, and we just went out every day. But I do remember spending that summer up on, like as if you're building new houses and they have all the stones in heaps and big piles. And I do remember just kind of climbing up them and coming down and going up them and coming down. And I'm sure my 2 cousins were very attentive to me and probably gave me anything I wanted for the whole summer. But all I know is, like, I didn't go to the funeral because it wasn't done then.
Yeah,
like,
it's such a different
generation. Then, yeah, the generation. And it's like, you know, who doesn't bring their child to the funeral, whatever. And there was nothing, Dave, and that's the thing myself and my brother were talking about yesterday when I was going through this with him, and we were saying, like, David's name was never spoken about again. And I find that bizarre. Because even with John dying, I always made a point of saying, you know, do you think your dad would be proud of this, or John would love this? And like, even so much, I probably went overboard, which I do. And even so much as Faye said to me, oh my God, Mum, will you please stop mentioning Dad on every single thing that we do? So, but David's name was never mentioned. And the sad thing is, when we were going back to England, because now he actually stayed in Ireland, and he was buried in Drumshanbo, where my mum's from. Okay. In the grave with her dad. And we went back to England, and I remember at the ferry, the guy looking at the tickets and saying, okay, there's one child missing, where is he? And my mum and dad then having to produce the death cert to show that he had died, yeah. So, and when you think about it now, like, who would bury. It's just there. And I absolutely 1,000,000% do not fault my parents.
It was a different time.
It's a different generation. But how hard was it for them to bury their child in Ireland
and then get back on a boat
and go to England
and leave effectively that child behind?
Yeah, their eldest their eldest boy, their firstborn, who was always ill, and they spent so much time with him. I mean, so that must have.
Yeah.
I don't think my parents were ever the same after that.
Yeah,
they couldn't be.
No, and also for you. Like if they weren't talking about it, you were sort of forgotten. Your grief wasn't acknowledged.
No, I don't remember any of us crying about him. I don't remember any kind of grief on that. Now, I mean, I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, but you must have been.
It was all just kept inside.
Yeah.
All just kept inside.
Wow.
I know.
You're in, obviously, a much better place.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
But
it's still hard.
It's very, very hard.
Do you know, like it's 11 years now, and I actually find that I'm struggling a little bit more now than I was.
I think that's because time, it's sort of getting further away.
Yeah, like I think that's 11 years since John died, but I'm like, people say to me, does it get better with time? And I suppose if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said, yeah, time does heal. But now I'm 11 years at it and I'm like, no, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't.
No, it's
you learn to live with it. But
yeah.
It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy at all.
I think it's because the person is further and further away and new things happen and new things are going on in the world that they're not part of and they will never know.
Yeah. But
I think
do you find as well, I kind of find now I'm probably a bit pissed off with him that he's not here.
Yeah, I get moments like that as well.
But they say there's the 7 steps of grieving.
Yeah,
I absolutely don't believe in that because I think if there is, then I'm going through the angry
16th.
one. Yeah, I'm revisiting the angry one now, and I'm like, Vecchia, why did you have to die? Like you could have. It's just not fair.
No, and I mean, I think different things happen in your life, maybe with your kids, whatever, and that can trigger things, that can bring stuff up, and why aren't you here? Why am I doing this? Why aren't you? And I think that's totally understandable as life goes on.
And the thing that I find surreal is Jack, my grandson, Megan's little boy. He seems to know so much about John that it's unreal. It's mad, and he's 9.
Yeah.
And sometimes he actually cries and Megan will say, what's wrong with you, Jack? He says, I just wish your dad was still here.
Oh,
I know. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but isn't it lovely that he knows
really,
all about it?
Really nice. Now, I've gone to mediums and they do say to me that John is living through Jack.
Yeah.
And I said that to Megan. Yeah. I said it to Megan and Megan would say, Mum, you won't believe what Jack just said today. And how would he know that Dad did that?
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah.
Michelle, this I know was incredibly difficult.
It's probably good therapy to get it off my chest.
You're doing incredible things. You do give back as well.
Yeah.
With your brows, where you offer people cancer. But you every day with your business, you get up, you keep it going, and just even making people feel better.
Oh, absolutely.
About themselves.
And like you're saying there about cancer. So, I mean, I suppose what I do give back is I know what it's like to be there. I actually had breast cancer as well.
Okay.
In 2006. So I know what it's like. So when ladies are coming to me, and it's become very, very prevalent again now. There's a couple of years where there was a lull and now it seems to be back again. But I do know what they're going through and I'm able to help them with their brows by giving them their brows back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when someone has cancer and they're going through chemo, brows are the last thing to lose and they're the first thing to come back.
Yeah.
So I do work with them through their chemo to help them. Well, I'm going to give them the brows.
Make them feel good again.
And make them feel good so that they can, not look as...
Michelle, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming in.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.